Have you ever sat quietly in your living room and thought to yourself, when did everything change? Once, you were the center of their world. Your words mattered. Your presence brought comfort. But now the conversations feel shorter. The visits feel more like errands. And somewhere along the way, it seems like your opinion doesn't carry the same weight. Maybe it's in the way they interrupt you, or how they glance at their phones when you speak. Maybe it's that subtle shift in tone, the impatience, the sense that your value has somehow faded. And you wonder, is this just how life goes? Is this what it means to grow older? To become background noise in the lives of the very people you raised with every ounce of your heart? You're not alone. And this feeling you carry, this ache, this longing to be seen again, it's not just valid, it's powerful. Because it means you still care. It means your voice still wants to be heard. But what if I told you that respect doesn't have to fade with time? What if there's a way, not to force respect, but to earn it back by rediscovering who you are underneath all those years of giving? In this video, we're going to explore 6 meaningful steps you can take to reclaim your place, not as someone waiting to be noticed, but as someone who inspires respect without ever asking for it. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. That way you won't miss the next stories that might just speak directly to your heart. All right, let's begin. Number 1, stop chasing approval. Start reclaiming self-respect. Let me tell you about Rosa. She was 74 when she walked into my clinic for a routine checkup. Fit as ever, still gardening every morning and making her famous lemon pies for the neighbors. But behind her cheerful voice, there was a heaviness. While taking her blood pressure, I asked casually, "How's your family?" She hesitated. "Oh, they're fine, I guess. I just wish they saw me for more than a free babysitter and a ride to the airport." That cracked something open. She told me how her daughter never asked her how she was doing, just handed her the baby and ran to appointments. Her son called only when something broke. And Rosa, out of love and loyalty, said yes to everything. But every yes cost her a little piece of self-worth. And she's not alone. Many parents, mothers especially, fall into this silent trap. Decades of giving, nurturing, anticipating every need. We convince ourselves that the more we give, the more we'll be loved. That sacrificing our needs is a badge of honor. But let me say this plainly. Respect is not built through martyrdom. It is built through self-respect. And here's where the real danger lies. When you start chasing your children's approval, you hand over your sense of worth like it's a gift they can return or forget to unwrap. I've seen proud, intelligent men and women second-guess themselves around their own kids, editing their opinions, hesitating before speaking, avoiding the smallest conflict just to keep the connection. But connection without dignity isn't connection, it's dependence. And your children can sense that, not because they're cruel, but because human nature pulls away from what feels emotionally needy. Let's pause here and reflect. Have you ever said yes when you meant no just to stay involved in their lives? Held your tongue when they dismissed your advice with a smirk? Canceled your plans because they called the last minute for help and you didn't want to risk seeming unhelpful? That's not love. That's fear of losing love. And fear should never be the foundation of a parent-child bond. One of the hardest, bravest things you can do as an aging parent is this. Stop trying to win your children's attention and start commanding your own respect by how you treat yourself. Say no when it compromises your peace. Speak your truth even if it makes them uncomfortable. Stand firm in your values without expecting applause. Because here's what happens when you stop chasing. Your children start noticing. Rosa eventually made small changes. She stopped rearranging her schedule every time someone needed a favor. She signed up for a local painting class on Thursdays and marked it as non-negotiable. At first, her kids were confused, maybe even annoyed, but something shifted. They called less, but listened more. They didn't just assume she'd say yes. They asked. They didn't treat her like a fixture. They began treating her like a person. You don't need to scold or shame your children into respecting you. You just need to respect yourself so clearly, so consistently, that they have no choice but to follow your lead. And that's the foundation we'll build on, starting here. Still with us? Comment one below to show you're walking this journey. And if this story reminds you of someone, maybe even yourself, consider subscribing to hear what's coming next. Number 2, calm confidence speaks louder than arguments. Let me introduce you to Mr. Lowell, a man with a voice like smooth jazz and a presence that once commanded an entire high school auditorium. He taught history for 35 years, never once needed to raise his voice. Kids just listened. But after retirement, something shifted. His students used to lean in when he spoke. His own adult children? They barely looked up from their phones. He tried being patient, then firm, then loud. "I've earned their respect," he told me once, "but now I feel like I have to beg for it." Lowell did what many parents do when they feel ignored. He began reminding them of everything. The years he worked double shifts, the weekends he drove them to soccer games, the nights he stayed up worrying when they didn't come home on time. But here's a difficult truth. The more you demand respect through words, the more it slips through your fingers. Respect isn't won in a shouting match. It isn't recovered through guilt. It's earned again through presence, calm, steady, and deeply grounded. Lowell eventually took a different route, not because someone told him to, but because one day he got tired of arguing. He stopped reminding his kids and started modeling what self-respect looked like. At dinner, when his son interrupted, Lowell gently paused the conversation. "I'll continue when I'm being listened to," he said. No anger, just clarity. He didn't storm out. He didn't shame anyone. He simply stopped accepting disrespect as normal. That evening changed something. Not dramatically, not instantly, but subtly. His son apologized the next day, not for what he said, but for how he said it. And that's the moment Lowell knew. Stillness speaks louder than shouting. Self-respect echoes longer than lectures. I've witnessed this pattern again and again. Another patient of mine, Alma, had a daughter who rolled her eyes at every suggestion, brushing her off like an outdated voicemail. Alma used to fight back until it exhausted her. So instead, she began responding with quiet strength. "If you don't want my input, that's okay," she'd say, "but I'm still allowed to share it." Then she'd move on. No bitterness, no approval seeking. After months of resistance, her daughter did something unexpected. She asked for Alma's opinion, and she listened, really listened. This isn't magic. It's boundaries paired with calm energy. In my years as a physician and counselor, I've learned this universal law of relationships. People mirror what you model. If you panic, they escalate. If you're grounded, they settle. If you demand, they resist. But if you embody the kind of respect you're asking for, they eventually adjust to meet it. Let's be clear, it's not your job to control your children's tone or behavior, but it is your responsibility to protect your own peace. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, justify, argue, or shout, pause, breathe. Let the silence speak for you, and when you do speak, let your voice be calm but firm. Not for their sake, but for your own, because that's when they'll start to see you not as someone who's fighting for relevance, but as someone who's already rooted in it. If you're still here, drop a 2 in the comments to let us know. And don't forget to subscribe, because this journey is just getting started, and it's one worth walking together. Number 3, emotional independence is a gift to you and to them. I once sat across from a woman named Clarice, a former librarian who could quote Emily Dickinson from memory and kept fresh tulips on her windowsill year-round. She had 3 children, grown, busy, scattered across the country, and though she never said it out loud, you could see the longing in her eyes every time the phone didn't ring. "I try not to bother them," she said gently, "but when weeks go by, I start wondering if I still matter." That sentence has echoed in my mind ever since. Do I still matter? It's one of the quietest and most painful questions I hear from parents. Clarice had dedicated decades of her life to motherhood. She attended every recital, packed every lunch, stayed up late, editing college essays. But now her world had shrunk to waiting, waiting for calls, waiting for visits, waiting to be remembered. And here's what I told her, not as a doctor, but as someone who has seen the full arc of many lives. The moment your happiness hinges on someone else's attention, you start giving away pieces of your soul. It's easy to fall into the trap. Our culture glorifies selflessness in parenting. But somewhere along the way, Many parents begin to define their worth entirely by their children's responses. The problem? Children, especially grown ones, sense this emotional dependence. And human nature is strange. The more someone needs us to validate their existence, the more we tend to pull away. Not out of cruelty, but out of pressure. That's why emotional independence isn't just healing for you, it's a relief for them too. After our conversation, Clarice took one small step. She joined a memoir writing group at the local library. Just 2 hours a week, pen in hand, stories flowing. No one there knew her as mom or grandma. She was Clarice again. Soon she was attending readings, hosting coffee nights, even mentoring younger writers. And something fascinating happened. Her kids started calling more, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity. They wanted to hear about her new stories. They admired her new sense of purpose. They no longer saw her as a woman waiting, but as someone fully alive. There's a lesson here that I cannot stress enough. The more you fill your own cup, the more others are drawn to drink from it. You do not need to prove your worth to your children by being ever available or emotionally dependent. You need to reclaim your worth by living a life so full, so vibrant, that it reminds them, oh yes, that's who raised me. Whether it's a walking club, a painting class, volunteering at the animal shelter, or reading poetry under the sun, find something that is yours alone, not to spite them, but to free yourself. Because the more you detach your happiness from their presence, the more likely they are to return to it, not because they're guilted into it, but because they're inspired by it. In becoming emotionally independent, you send a message loud and clear. I love you, I'm proud of you, but I don't need you to validate who I am anymore. And paradoxically, that's the very energy that often brings them back to you with deeper respect and softer hearts. If you're still watching, leave a 3 below. And if this chapter spoke to you, consider subscribing. Sometimes reclaiming your life isn't about doing more, it's about remembering who you've always been. Number 4, boundaries are not walls. They are invitations to respect. I remember the first time Gordon, a retired engineer in his early 80s, came to see me. He was dressed immaculately, pressed shirt, leather shoes, hands folded in his lap. But the first thing he said wasn't about his health. It was this: I built bridges for 40 years, but I can't seem to build one to my own son. There was a quiet tremble in his voice. He explained that his son, now a successful executive, rarely listened when Gordon spoke. He cuts me off, tells me I'm old school. Even when I give good advice, he acts like I'm in the way. I asked Gordon what he usually did in those moments. He sighed. I stay quiet. I don't want to upset him. That's when I leaned forward and said something many of us never hear growing up. Silence doesn't keep the peace, it buries your self-worth. And Gordon isn't alone. Many loving parents fall into the trap of thinking that saying nothing, tolerating dismissive behavior, is the price of staying close to their children. They confuse boundaries with conflict, thinking if I speak up, they'll stop coming around. But here's the truth. Setting clear, compassionate boundaries isn't an act of separation. It's an invitation to mutual respect. After that appointment, Gordon decided to make a change. The next time his son interrupted him during dinner, he didn't raise his voice. He simply said, let's try something different tonight. Let's give each other space to finish a thought before jumping in. I want to hear you, and I want to be heard too. There was an awkward pause. Then his son nodded, slightly caught off guard. Over time, Gordon began to define other lines, gently but firmly. If we're speaking harshly, I'll step out and come back when we're calmer. If you want my advice, I'm happy to give it, but I won't force it. If plans change last minute, I expect a heads up, not just silence. His son resisted at first, like most people do when the status quo is challenged. But Gordon didn't waver. He was calm, consistent, and clear. And slowly, something shifted. The condescending tone softened. The interruption stopped. His son even began to thank him, not just for help, but for his presence. That's the power of boundaries. They teach others how to treat you, not through scolding or shame, but through self-respect made visible. Another patient of mine, Nina, had a daughter who frequently dismissed her suggestions with a wave of the hand. One day, Nina smiled gently and said, "I love you, but I'm going to start saving my energy for conversations where I feel heard. Let me know when that's what you want too." It wasn't a threat, it was a declaration of value. Within weeks, her daughter was texting, asking for advice, and actually listening. Boundaries, when expressed with kindness and clarity, don't push people away. They draw in the ones who truly care and filter out patterns that drain your spirit. So, if you're feeling like your voice no longer matters in your own family, ask yourself, what behaviors have I been tolerating that diminish my dignity? What gentle lines can I draw, not to punish, but to protect? Because respect isn't a demand, it's a response to how deeply you respect yourself. Still here? Comment 4 below to let us know you're walking with us. And if this chapter gave you something to reflect on, subscribe so you don't miss the next part of the journey. There's more healing to come. Number 5, stop overgiving. Your generosity deserves respect. Let me tell you about Elaine, a woman in her late 70s who lived on a quiet street with rose bushes that bloomed brighter than anywhere else in the neighborhood. Elaine had 3 adult sons, smart, successful, and in her words, a little too used to me saying yes. She had spent her life giving, rides to school, late night talks, tuition payments, emergency loans, free babysitting, even last minute meal deliveries when her youngest son forgot to shop before Thanksgiving. "I love them," she said, "but lately I feel like a vending machine. Press a button, and mom delivers." Elaine wasn't bitter. She was tired. That exhaustion, it's the silent price of overgiving without appreciation. And if you've ever found yourself giving more than you receive, only to be met with silence, indifference, or even entitlement, you know how much it stings. But here's something we rarely say out loud. Unconditional love is not the same as unconditional availability. You can love your children deeply and still say no. You can support them and still expect gratitude. You can be generous without becoming a resource to be exploited. The line between love and enabling is razor thin and easy to cross when all you want is connection. Elaine's turning point came when she was recovering from a minor surgery and asked her sons for help. None of them showed up. "They had meetings," she said, barely above a whisper. That was the moment she realized. If you keep showing up for people who won't show up for you, you begin to disappear from your own life. She didn't lash out. Instead, she made a list of the things she would no longer do without being asked and appreciated. No more automatic yes to babysitting. No more late night rides unless it was a true emergency. No more money without a conversation and a plan. At first, her sons were confused. One even accused her of being difficult. But Elaine stayed firm, and something beautiful began to unfold. One by one, they started to call, not just to ask, but to check in. They offered to take her out. One brought flowers. Another wrote her a card, thanking her for everything you did that I didn't see until now. When giving becomes expected, it breeds entitlement. When giving becomes a choice, it teaches value. I once told a patient, every time you say yes when you mean no, you're saying no to your own peace. That sentence changed her life. And I hope it stays with you too. It's not about cutting people off. It's about recalibrating what healthy, reciprocal love looks like. You're not selfish for wanting your kindness to be appreciated. You're not wrong for pulling back when your giving is met with silence. Love isn't supposed to drain you. It's supposed to nourish you and those you give it to. So if you find yourself giving and giving only to feel smaller and smaller each time, ask yourself, am I teaching them that my love is endless or that my boundaries are invisible? Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop overgiving and let them remember what your generosity really meant. If you've ever felt like Elaine, type 5 below. And don't forget to subscribe. We still have one final step to go, perhaps the most powerful one yet. Number 6, build a life that doesn't revolve around your children. There's a photo I keep on my desk. It's of a woman named Marlene standing on a hiking trail with the wind in her silver hair and a grin that could rival a sunrise. She's holding a map in one hand and a coffee thermos in the other. She's 79 years old in that picture. What you don't see is the chapter that came before it. Marlene spent most of her life building a world around her 2 sons. She gave them everything. Time, money, comfort, space, forgiveness. And for years, that world felt full. Until one summer, her older son moved across the country and stopped calling regularly. Her younger son began responding to texts with one-word answers. When she asked if they'd visit for her birthday, both had prior commitments. I realized, she told me one afternoon, I had made them the sun, and I was just a satellite. Her voice cracked. But I forgot, I'm allowed to be the sun too. That's where everything began to change. Marlene didn't cut her children off. She didn't write an angry letter. What she did was infinitely more powerful. She started living again. She joined a local travel club, mostly people half her age, which didn't bother her one bit. She started learning Italian, hosted monthly brunches with friends, and signed up to volunteer at a community garden. She told me something I'll never forget. The more I filled my own days, the less I resented theirs. And just like that, her sons started calling more. Not because she begged, but because they missed her. That's the paradox of emotional independence. When you stop orbiting your children's world, they become curious about yours. You become someone they admire, not just someone they once needed. Someone who glows even when they're not around. One of the biggest myths in aging is that fulfillment must come from your family, that your identity is only as relevant as your role as a parent or grandparent. But let me say this clearly, as both a doctor and someone who has watched lives bloom at 50, 60, 70, even 90. You are more than the sum of the relationships you've poured into. You are a person with dreams, with curiosity, with a pulse that still wants to dance. Don't wait for their schedules to open up. Don't put your joy on pause. Take the class, learn the thing, go to the concert, get the dog, write the poem, travel alone, join the choir, paint your damn walls teal if it makes you smile. Because when you stop building your life around your children, you start building a life for yourself. And that is when everything begins to shift. Marlene now sends postcards instead of reminders. She texts photos from mountaintops instead of waiting by the window. And her sons? They don't just see their mother anymore. They see a woman they deeply respect. And that's the heart of this final chapter. You don't need to wait for them to give you a seat at their table. Build your own. Decorate it with everything that makes you feel alive. And invite them when you're ready to sit beside a person who never stopped being whole. If this chapter spoke to you, comment 6 below. And if you're feeling even a little more seen, subscribe. We're not done yet. The conclusion will bring it all together. If no one else has told you today, let me be the one. You still matter. Not because of what you do for others, not because of what you've given or how much you've sacrificed, but simply because of who you are. You are not too much. You are not in the way. You are a human being with a full heart, a lifetime of wisdom, and a story that deserves to be heard. And no matter how much things have changed between you and your children, please remember, you don't need to chase respect. You only need to live in a way that demands it, quietly, powerfully, and with grace. We've explored how approval-seeking dims your light, how emotional independence sets you free, how boundaries, when built with love, create bridges, not walls. And most of all, how building a life of your own doesn't take you away from your children. It brings them closer to the version of you they've always needed to see. So wherever you are right now, in a quiet home, a busy apartment, or a garden filled with memories, know this: it's never too late to be respected. It's never too late to reclaim your joy. And it's never, ever too late to remember that you are not just someone's parent. You are someone with light, with voice, with worth. If this video touched your heart, please take a second to like it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss another moment like this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. I wish you peace, strength, and a renewed sense of self-respect today and every day.